What's up, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we are diving headfirst into a world of pure audacity, incredible loopholes, and life-changing moments. We're talking about the most bogus charges people have ever seen, the most insane things students have said to their teachers, and the one comment from a boss that led to an immediate resignation. We've got stories of revenge, redemption, and some family secrets so wild they'll make your jaw drop. Trust me, you're not going to believe some of these. The bogus bill that led to a rental charge. Let's start with a story that's a masterclass in standing up for yourself. This comes from a guy whose wife was pregnant and in the hospital. The couple was in a teaching hospital, which they were fine with. They knew that learning was part of the deal. So when a doctor they'd never seen before, a man in a crisp white coat, casually walked into the room with a group of student nurses, they didn't think anything of it. He politely asked if he could use the wife's case to explain something about pregnancy, and they said, "Sure, that's totally fine." He gently lifted the blanket, spoke for a moment to his students about her condition, and then the whole group walked out. It was a quick, professional exchange, and the couple was happy to help. No notes were taken in her chart. No examination was performed in the traditional sense, and the doctor never even spoke directly to the patient. It was a teaching moment, nothing more. But then the bill arrived, and on it, a charge for $180 from that very doctor's office. The charge was for examining my wife. My guy was furious. He called the office, completely baffled. He didn't examine anything, he said. He didn't write a single note in her file, and he never even touched or spoke to her. He was teaching students, and he already gets paid well for that. But the staff didn't seem to care. The office manager, in a cold, matter-of-fact voice, said, "The doctor examined her. That's what the charge is for. Pay it or face the consequences." Well, this guy was not the kind of person to back down. He thought, two can play this game. So he went home, got an envelope, and mailed a bill of his own to the doctor's office. On the bill, it was clearly written, "For rental of a training model, my wife, $180. The office manager called him back, absolutely livid. "What does this mean?" she demanded. He calmly explained it. "It's simple. He used my wife to train student nurses, and there's a fee for that too. If he insists it was a real exam, we'll meet in small claims court. There, I'll ask him to show where in her records his exam notes can be found." Not long after, the doctor's lawyer called, offering to settle. The husband's response was perfect. "There's nothing to settle. Drop the bill, and I'll drop mine." He never heard from them again. It just goes to show sometimes you have to get creative to fight a system that's trying to rip you off. The smartest, most depressing thing a student ever said. Now, let's talk about a story that will make you rethink everything you think you know about high school students. A teacher shared this unforgettable moment with a student who was failing math. The teacher had called the student into the office for a quick pep talk. He started by explaining that it's honestly harder to get an F than to just do the basic work and pass with a D. He was trying to motivate the kid, to get him to put in just a little effort. But the student looked at him with an unnerving calmness and said something that completely stunned the teacher. He explained that he had carefully read the school district's new summer school policy. It clearly stated that if a student received a D or an F in a core subject, they were allowed to take the class again for free during the summer session. But if they got a C or higher and simply wanted to raise their grade, the cost was a whopping $360, a sum his family definitely couldn't afford to pay out of pocket without making major sacrifices. So, the student had made a very thoughtful and difficult decision. He was purposely failing the class. His plan was to retake it in the summer for free and aim for a much better grade, maybe even an A. The teacher was truly speechless. This kid's reasoning made complete sense, and the teacher couldn't offer a single strong argument against it. It was a loophole, a flaw in the system that a kid had found and exploited in the most heartbreaking way. The teacher simply told him to sit quietly for the rest of the semester, avoid bothering anyone, and wished him the best of luck. Word spread quickly, and soon more and more students copied his plan. Summer school ended up packed with remedial kids who were actually more than capable of doing well. Some teachers were annoyed, but the students were simply following the district's policy exactly as written. When summer came, the original student retook the class and earned a well-deserved A. His story became a legendary tale among the faculty, a stark reminder of how a seemingly simple policy could have such a profound and depressing impact. The cruel comment that led to an epic takedown. This next story is a powerful one about a boss whose cruelty was the catalyst for one person's incredible success. This guy had been at his accounting firm for 7 years. He was loyal, never missed a deadline, and was always the first one in the door. For 3 months, he had been balancing hospital visits with 60-hour work weeks. His daughter had been diagnosed with leukemia, and it had been a harrowing journey. That Friday, his daughter's doctor called. Her white cell count had crashed, and she needed emergency treatment. He knew he had to leave immediately. He walked into his boss's office and told him the situation. The boss, without even looking up from his computer, said 5 words that would change everything. "That's what weekends are for." The employee stood there, stunned. 7 years of loyalty, and that's what he was worth. He tried to explain, his voice shaking. "My daughter might not have until the weekend." "We all have problems," the boss replied, still focused on his screen. "The Peterson audit is due Monday." In that moment, everything became clear. The job, the loyalty, the long hours, none of it mattered. He placed his keycard on the desk and walked out. He didn't pack his things. He didn't say goodbye to anyone. He just left. In the hospital waiting room, he sent one final simple email to HR explaining why he wouldn't be returning. 3 days later, while his daughter was recovering, he got a call from their biggest client. They'd heard what happened through office gossip and were disgusted by the boss's callousness. They offered him a position as their in-house financial director with a 30% higher salary, flexible hours, and full benefits. The best part? 6 months later, they pulled their $12 million account from his old firm. His ex-boss was demoted. He sometimes thinks about sending his old boss a thank you card because his cruelty was the push he needed to find something better for himself and his daughter, who, by the way, is now in remission. The fired tech who got the last laugh. Get ready for a story about sweet, sweet revenge. This guy, let's call him Alex, was the only certified technician at a tech repair shop, but his boss, Mike, treated him like he was completely disposable. One Friday, Alex stayed late to fix a laptop for a customer who was in a huge hurry. The customer was so grateful to get her laptop with all her wedding photos back that she tipped him $100 directly. Monday morning, Mike called Alex into his office. Pointing at the security footage, he said, "You're stealing from the company. That's company money." Alex tried to explain it was a personal tip, but Mike wouldn't listen. "Clean out your desk. You're fired." Alex, shocked and angry, packed his things and left. What Mike didn't realize was that Alex was the one who had been fixing the town mayor's computer and the school district's server system. 3 days later, his phone blew up. First the mayor, then the superintendent, both furious that their equipment wasn't ready. Then Mike called. His tone was completely different. "Hey Alex, slight misunderstanding. Why don't you come back? Same position, same pay." "Same pay for the only certified technician in town?" Alex said, savoring the moment. "Well, what do you want?" Mike asked. "Double my salary, 10% of all fees, and a written apology," Alex said. And then he hung up. 2 days later, the other technician told Alex that Mike had lost the mayor's business, the school district contract, and 3 other major clients. A week after that, Mike showed up at Alex's front door with a contract offering him everything he had asked for. Alex simply closed the door in his face. He had already accepted a job with the school district, better pay, better benefits, and no Mike. The shop closed 3 months later. Turns out Alex was pretty special after all. The time clock loophole. Ever wondered if you could beat the system at work? This person did, and they exploited a loophole for 3 years. When they started at a new tech company, they noticed the time clock rounded to 15-minute intervals. They reviewed the employee handbook and saw no policy about this rounding system. So for 2 weeks, they started experimenting. They discovered that if you clocked in between 8:53 and 9:07, it recorded exactly 9. The same thing happened for clocking out. Anything between 4:53 and 5:07 registered as 5. This meant a possible 14-minute window of paid time twice a day. He started arriving at 9:06 and leaving at 4:54 daily. Nobody noticed, and his manager even praised his punctuality in reviews. He did this for 3 years, banking a little extra time every day. Then, 3 years later, HR announced a new biometric time system with minute precision tracking. A week before implementation, he got an email flagging his suspicious time patterns and requesting a meeting. He came prepared, with a printout of the employee handbook and documentation showing he had never violated any policy. The handbook simply stated, work hours 9 to 5, with no specifics about the rounding. During the meeting, HR claimed he'd stolen 19 minutes daily for 3 years, totaling over $9,000. They threatened termination and repayment. He calmly showed them his documentation and pointed out that without a specific policy, they had no grounds for action. He also mentioned, bluffing, that he had already consulted an employment attorney. 2 weeks later, they issued a revised handbook with detailed time policies. HR sent a company-wide email about closing system loopholes, but he never got fired. His manager later whispered to him, they found 23 others doing the same thing. They couldn't afford to lose that many people at once. He still works there, but now he arrives exactly at 9. The IVF baby and the family secret. This next story is a deeply personal one about a shocking family secret that came to light during the holidays. Growing up with 4 older brothers, this person always thought they were just the girl their parents had hoped for. But this past Christmas, they discovered something that would turn their entire world upside down. They were at their dad's nursing home, a typical loud holiday gathering with their boisterous brothers dominating every conversation. Whenever dating came up, all eyes would inevitably land on her, and they'd joke about her ending up like their mom, who started dating their dad when she was much younger. The constant teasing was getting under her skin. This time, their comments about relationships, pregnancy, and guys being trash pushed her over the edge. Under her breath, she muttered, "I wish I was a boy." She didn't think anyone heard her, but her mom did. Her mom turned to her and said something that stopped her dead in her tracks. "Why would you want that? We chose for you to be a girl for a reason." "Chose?" she asked, completely confused. Suddenly her brothers were staring at her. Then they burst out laughing. One of them smirked and dropped a bomb. "Dude, you're the lab rat?" She stood up and demanded answers, and that's how on Christmas Day, after 20 years of her life, she learned the most shocking truth. She's an IVF baby. Her dad couldn't conceive with her mom, so they made her in a laboratory. But here's the kicker. When given the choice, they specifically chose for her to be a girl. Why? Because they were flat out tired of having boys. She never even knew this was possible. She could have had an entirely different life. Instead, she was born because her parents wanted to break their family pattern. One genetic selection, one deliberate choice, and suddenly her entire identity felt like it was hanging by a thread. She was a planned experiment, a carefully curated daughter, and now she doesn't know how to feel. The psychopath brother. Finally, we have a harrowing story from a person who grew up with a psychopath for a brother. This person's older brother, from day one, was abnormally aggressive. The first thing he did when she was born was try to rip open her stomach with his nails. When he started school, he quickly learned that he could physically attack other kids and still be their mother's golden child. His behavior went over the edge once their father, the only person holding him back, passed away. He once used a pencil to try and take a boy's eye out because the boy had looked at him the wrong way. During homecoming, he ran around with acid in a bottle and sprayed it on girls' clothes. A majority of those girls ended up with burns and had to go to the hospital. He was expelled from 3 different high schools for threatening to attack teachers. The thing is, her brother was never unloved. Over the years, all their relatives, friends, and teachers doted on him, convinced there was a reason behind his outbursts and that all he needed was support. It all came to an end when he recorded a video of him running over a guy who was walking his dog. While in prison, he was finally diagnosed as an actual psychopath. When he was released, he suddenly remembered he had a sister and did his best to find her. He showed up at her house and pretended he had gotten therapy and was all better now. She let him live with her for 2 months, during which he tried to impose his extreme political views on her and blew his entire inheritance money at a casino. When he threw her cat out of a window, she had no choice but to call the cops and cut all contact with him. It was a terrifying ordeal, a lifelong trauma that a person should never have to endure, and a brutal lesson in what a true psychopath is capable of. These stories are just a few examples of how wild life can get. From fighting back against a bogus bill to the devastating truth of a family secret and the sheer audacity of people just trying to get by.